Hi everybody. So one of the questions that I get asked the most is how do I get my splits? Okay, I'm going to tell you right now. Consistency. There it is. Consistency. Every day. Stretch every day. Maybe give yourself a rest day. And hydration. So you want to make sure that you are well hydrated before you stretch so that your muscles have elasticity. Also, before we do this, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you are warmed up. You don't ever want to stretch on cold muscles because A, they're not going to stretch very far, right? The more blood that you have moving through your muscles and the more heat that you have in your muscles, the more elastic they're going to be. And B, the more elastic that they are, the less likely that you are to tear a muscle. So make sure that your body temperature is elevated. Make sure that you've done a little bit of exercise before you hit this. So the muscles that we're going to be looking at mostly today are our hip flexors, our hamstrings, right? Our glutes, and our adductors. So this is a little series that I use a lot in my classes and I also use in my personal practice. I would suggest starting with a yoga mat. And we're just going to start with a forward fold to a halfway lift. So I'm going to roll myself down. My feet are about hips distance apart. Roll it down. Halfway lift, so we're going to flatten the back to lift the head up above the heart. That's going to start to open up the hamstrings. You might even do a couple of those. Inhale up. Exhale down. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to walk it out to downward dog. So I like to start in a high plank first. Wrists right beneath shoulders, heels are hip width apart. From here, we're going to press back into down dog, so pike those hips up nice and high. Back is flat. Shoulders are pushing away from the ears. Heels are pushing towards the mat. It's okay if they don't touch. We're going to hang here for a couple breaths. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to lift one leg up into three-legged dog. You want to keep your hips and shoulders square. Try not to skew. You might even bend the knee to open up at the hip. Then we're going to pull through for a high lunge. So step that foot up between your hands before you drop into your lunge. If that's a little too hard for you, you can always come to your knees. Walk that foot forward. What I don't want to see is that toe behind your knee because that over time is going to wear out your knee and that's a great way to cause an injury. So ankle is just below the knee or slightly forward. We're going to stay low for a minute. Once you've stayed here for a few breaths, we're going to lift it up. If you want to increase the hip flexor stretch here, you can take whatever knee is forward, take that hand to your knee, and reach up and over, and you're going to feel just how much wider or how much higher your hip flexor comes. Once you've hit that for a few breaths, bring your hands back down to your mat, drop your back knee, uncurl your toe. Push the booty back to extend your front leg. This is stretching our hamstring now. The flatter your back is, the more you're going to isolate that hamstring muscle. If you collapse forward, all you're doing is stressing out your lower back. So keep that back nice and flat. You can always shift it back if you want to. After holding this for a few breaths, we're going to hit pigeon. That's going to hit our abductors or our glutes, right? The hip muscles on the outside. So what I'm going to do, I'll turn my mat so y'all can see me here. If I'm in that hamstring stretch, I'm going to turn the outside of that foot across my mat by bending my knee. From here, I'm going to push my knee forward to extend my back leg and settle myself down onto that hip. Like I said, this is pigeon pose. We should be hitting our glute here. If you sit up, you may hit your hip flexor a little bit, or you can relax it down. If you want to increase that stretch, move your foot forward towards the front of your mat. If you want to decrease it, take it back towards your body. So we're going to hit this whole sequence on our other side. From your pigeon, you're going to tuck that back toe under. Hands come right underneath shoulders, push back to down dog. Lift the opposite leg, three-legged dog, stay square. Bend it if you'd like. Pull through to your lunge. Take a few breaths. Bring it up. You can always open up. Hands come back to the mat. Back knee comes to the floor. Push the booty back to extend that front leg. Remember, flat back isolates the hamstring. After you've held that for a few breaths, go right into pigeon. Outside of that front foot comes to the mat. Push your knee forward to extend the back leg. Like I said, I'd suggest holding it up and then walking it down. Once you've held that for a few breaths, we're going to hit our adductors. So your adductors are your inner thigh muscles. These guys here. So we're going to open up into a straddle first. I don't really care how wide you go. I mean, I guess the wider the better, but if you're here, that's okay too. So, legs are open, kneecaps are pointing straight up to the ceiling. So, just like in my halfway lift or in my hamstring stretch, I'm going to keep my back flat here. And I'm going to think about leading with the crown of my head forward. Yeah. So I'll turn sideways so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. So what I am not doing is this, right? What I am doing is this. So what I would suggest doing here, especially because we're going for a deep stretch, go about halfway and hold, take a couple breaths. Go a little bit further and hold, take a couple breaths. A little bit further and hold, take a couple breaths, and then when you're ready, when you feel like your muscles have loosened up, you can really open it up to your full stretch. This is also a great place to practice your booty isolation. So, we're going to do one more adductor stretch. This is one of my favorites. I like to do this on a floor and not a mat so that I can slide a little bit. So I'm going to start on my knees, and I'm going to open my knees as wide as they go. My feet are straight back from the knee. They're not out here. They're not in here. Straight back. And then we're just going to sink it down to the floor. If you want to really push this stretch, you can put your feet against a wall and push your hands into the floor, and then you can really control how deep you want to go. So once again, that's going to hit your adductors. So, obviously I didn't sit in these stretches for very long in this video, mainly because if I did, it would take like 10 years for this to upload. So I would suggest sitting in each of these poses for 1 to 2 minutes, relax, read a book, watch TV. It's really important that you always keep breathing as you do these exercises. It's super easy to want to hold your breath while you're doing them, but keep breathing, stay mindful. Whenever I'm stretching, I always tell my students, on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as pain goes, you want to be around like a 6. So you want to feel it. You want to feel like you're pushing yourself. You do not want to be in pain. That's not the point of this exercise. We're just trying to open up our muscles. So that is our hips specifically. If you're working on your splits, I would suggest trying to hit these every day or every other day. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can always get a hold of me. And make sure to post your progress pics.